may or may not be a victim of the disappear for 6 months and come back unrecognisable movement. This was non-intentional, I swear it was only meant to last for 6 months. So please can somebody explain to me why 4 years later I am still stuck in this crazy cycle of disappearing and isolating myself for 6 months and then reappearing as a different person. Please can someone free me from the shackles, because I'm done. I am so done. I resign. Hi guys, so you're gonna have to excuse my appearance today because I am looking fucking crazy. Like, there's no disputing it. Hay fever is kicking my ass and I can't put my contact lenses in, therefore I can't get ready or put makeup on and look cute for this video like I intended to, but it's okay, we move. We are currently very much in the midst of a huge self-development, self-love, self-care movement, which apparently means cutting people off, ghosting people, isolating ourselves and protecting our peace, focusing on ourselves, becoming detached, becoming self-obsessed, disappearing for 6 months and coming back unrecognisable.
I want to completely change my entire life in 6 months and become unrecognizable.
All of the above. We are very deep in the trenches with it, and I've only just realised recently that I am literally a walking case study of this whole epidemic. If you are in the self-development, self-care, wellness area or corner of the internet, you will very much know that this is basically the majority of the content that you will see. And it is all in the name of self-care, self-love and wellness. And I, for one, I'm very much guilty of all of the above. You might as well lock me up now and throw away the key. Now, don't get me wrong, this era of the internet is very much the shit that I live for. Like, I genuinely live for all of the isolate yourself videos, focusing on yourself, becoming self-obsessed. I love that kind of content. Like, I literally live for it, and it's pretty much all I used to watch. However, I am recently having the realization that this angle on self-care and self-love and self-development is actually probably a little bit detrimental to us thriving as an actual human being in the real world.
I actually did it myself. Yeah.
Nice.
I've gotten to the point where I feel like it's actually something that is probably stripping us of our humanity and what it means to be a human in the real life, complex world that we live in. So I wanted to open up the discussion on this and see if you guys are resonating with this or if you're feeling a certain kind of way, because I know that this movement, the seagulls are so noisy, what the hell? Because I know that this movement and this era and age of the internet and self-development has been around for quite a long time now. Like, I started my self-love, self-care journey about 4 years ago, and I feel like it was probably still around before then, I don't know, but it was very much in a part of my life even for about 4 years now, I would say. And I wanted to discuss it. Like, I am literally, like I said earlier, I am a case study of this exact phenomenon that I'm talking about, and I just want to kind of talk through my experience of the whole isolating ourselves to become the best versions of ourselves and cutting people off, focusing on ourselves, ghosting people, phone on DND, all that kind of shit, and talk about the impact that it had on my life and the realizations and the lessons that I've learned from that whole era of my life. So this is all very much recent for me, this realization that I've had. I would say in like the past month, I've been having these feelings and feeling like I need to shift some sort of energy in my life because things just aren't working out for me. And as I said earlier, like, I have been stuck in these loops of kind of isolating myself from the world and focusing on myself, working on myself, doing all the things I need to do to heal and become the best version of myself. But in the process of that, I do feel like I've missed out on a lot of vital life lessons and what they could have taught me. I feel like this video is more so for the people who are in a similar situation to me and that you've kind of lived through all of this and now you're starting to feel a little bit stagnant and feeling like it's actually not beneficial for you to isolate yourself from the world and focus so much on yourself and becoming the best version of yourself. I wanted to talk about how I think that this angle of self-love and self-care and self-development very much has the potential to shelter us from the reality of the real world. I think it's very important to understand and realize that triggers and things that trigger us or make us feel a certain kind of way and they make us question something in our life or confront us, should I say, these triggers are actually so important and so vital for human development and just learning who you actually are. are. And I think a lot of the time when we do this whole isolation season, we kind of maybe subconsciously are doing it from a place of not wanting to be triggered so much, because I know that the world can be very triggering, and especially if you're living in an environment that doesn't really feel aligned to you or who you want to be. I feel like everything can become very, very triggering. And for the longest time, when I first went on this journey of self-love or whatever, I very much isolated myself as a way to cope with being triggered all the time, and as a way to cope with the fact that I was feeling out of alignment with the life that I had become so accustomed to and so familiar with. I think naturally, as you grow into a different person or a highest version of yourself, or you're just growing in general, you do go through this process of having to shed old layers of skin, and not literally skin, but you know what I mean. I think with that comes a lot of pain, and a lot of the time a lot of triggers, and I think we can so easily hide from that if we are isolating ourselves and just focusing purely on ourselves. And I think if any of you guys are anything like me, obviously it was only meant to last for 6 months, okay? I'd never intended to be here 4 years later and still doing the same kind of things. I thought it would be a 6-month job, like all of the TikToks and all the YouTube videos told me. Disappear for 6 months, focus on yourself, glow up, and come back as a completely different version of yourself who is unrecognizable.
Just disappear. Then go to war against the girl in the mirror.
I dare you to disappear. Go away for 6 months. Leave your familiar surroundings, your familiar routine, block out all the drama and negativity, and just ghost.
And what they don't tell you is that that is not the case. It might be the case for some people. I don't know anyone who it has been the case for, but I know that if you're wanting to make any kind of sustainable growth and any kind of real growth, you have to trust in God's timing and your actual path in life, and not try to fast track things too much, and cramming a lot of healing into the space of 6 months. So focusing on yourself, delving deep into your childhood traumas, delving deep into your shadow, trying to figure out who you are. It can become a little bit exhausting, and it feels like it just consumes your life, and it actually makes you a little bit low-key sad. And maybe not at the time when you're isolating yourself, because I do feel like that's quite a peaceful era, because you're not being confronted on any of these things. You can just kind of peacefully work through them. But then it's very much when you actually go back out into the real world and you're like, oh shit, I actually have to deal with people who don't align with me. That's crazy.
I actually did it myself. Yeah. Nice.
And that leads on to my next point of saying how isolating yourself and being in your own company is actually very easy. Once you get past any initial discomfort that you might feel in spending time with yourself, you learn that it is actually really nice to spend time with yourself. You learn that you're in control of your own energy. You can do exactly what you want without having to think about anyone else. Therefore, you can be selfish. And you are blissfully protected from the world and its problems in your cute little bubble that you have created for yourself. Now, this sounds all too familiar for me, because I feel like when I first started isolating myself from the world and focusing on myself, I very much cut out a lot of things that were triggering to me and a lot of things that were just disrupting my peace. And I feel like you'll hear a lot of people talking about that online, protect your peace, protect your energy. Even I talk about that a lot of the time. And I stopped watching the news. I stopped watching all types of different TV programs, crime documentaries, and I stopped listening to certain kinds of music, sad music, anything that would evoke any kind of negative feeling in me. And I very much bubble wrap myself so that I wasn't feeling any of these adverse emotions. And I said that that was all in the name of healing, and I thought that was me healing myself, when really all I was doing was bubble wrapping myself from the actual reality of the world. Now, I'm not saying that I disagree with that. I do still agree with that to a certain extent, because I still to this day do not watch the news. I have no interest in watching the news. I feel like the news has its own agenda anyway, and I am not willing to buy into that agenda. I feel like it's all very rooted in fear-mongering and keeping us in this scarcity mindset and keeping us in a fear-based mindset, and I am not about that life. The news does not benefit me in any kind of way, and when I do happen to catch the news, I'm watching it and I'm thinking, what is even being said right now?
Danny Shaw, who joins us now. Good evening, Daddy. Danny, thank you.
They are genuinely dealing with scraps. They are not even reporting any kind of news. Not that I want there to be like any big bad news, but it just goes to show that the news is basically just grasping onto anything negative and shoving it down your throat and making you feel like the world is awful. And while that might be true to an extent, I feel like it is true in many ways, I don't think it's needed for us to be reminded of the horror and the sadness and the hardship of the world every single morning while we're drinking our cup of tea or we're drinking our cup of coffee and eating our breakfast. Like, it's not necessary. I do think it's important to not shelter ourselves too much from the world, and I think that's something that an isolation season can very much focus on, and it can very much encourage you to do. So I kind of, at the beginning of last year, I went through this whole phase of being like, right, I'm going to go back into my isolation era and I'm going to really focus on myself, because I feel like in 2022, I didn't really do any of that. I was kind of just living life and going through the motions of life. And obviously at the start of 2023, I was like, okay, something needs to change. Like, I need to actually knuckle down and isolate myself and be with myself, spend time with myself. So I stopped listening to certain kind of music. In fact, I stopped listening to all kinds of music. I completely stopped listening to music because I found that it was just too triggering for me, and everything just kind of manipulated my energy and manipulated the way that I felt, because I am a very sensitive person. I do get impacted by like different energies and things like that. So I stopped listening to music. I stopped really watching TV programs. I would only really watch like one TV program at a time, but I really just cut down on the things that I was consuming. I came off social media. I wasn't on social media at all. And I got to a point in the year where I was thinking, my life feels so boring. Like, yeah, I feel like I'm at peace. I feel like I'm healing. I feel like I'm focusing on myself and I feel really confident and my self-concept is through the roof. But I didn't feel any kind of satisfaction from that. I just felt very bored. I didn't have anything to talk about. I didn't know what was going on in the world. I didn't even know about new songs that came out. Like, I was very detached from the whole entire world and I had nothing to give or provide or share with anyone. And I think we really focus on ourselves a lot in this day and age, and we are very self-centered and very like self-obsessed. And I think that was the point that I got to, where I was very self-obsessed. Like, I really rated myself, and I still do now, but like, I was very focused all the time on rating myself and thinking that everybody else rated me too. And it got to a point where it was a bit unhealthy and a little bit out of touch with the real world and like what was actually going on in life. And then I think it was like last summer when I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna start listening to music again. And I started listening to music, and obviously certain music brought up certain kinds of feelings in me. Like, certain songs from the past do make me feel a little bit sad. They bring up certain memories, but they also make me feel really happy. But I just remember listening to the music and thinking, oh my God, like, this does feel a little bit sad, but like, it's good to feel something. It's good to feel like I'm alive and that I'm a human being. I think that's when I started to have this epiphany of like, maybe it's not as beneficial as I think to isolate myself from the world and focus on myself so much. I think one thing that can be taken from having an isolation era or season of your life where you're just kind of focusing on yourself is that you do raise your vibration a lot, and you do raise the bar on the kind of tomfoolery you will or will not accept. In fact, I think I've been through these like seasons of my life, I have genuinely learned how to not even humor any kind of tomfoolery. Like, I don't take any bullshit anymore, and I feel like that is a direct result of me isolating myself and getting to know myself a lot and understanding what I do and don't want in my life and what I do and don't like. So that is great. It's great that it hires your standards and it hires your self-concept and how you look at yourself and how you love yourself. But when you get out into the real world again, once you actually expose yourself to your real life, not that you're not living real life while you're isolating, but you are kind of sheltering yourself a little bit. So when you stop sheltering yourself, you actually realize that life feels so much harder. It feels so much more grating and annoying because people are just crazy. People are full of tomfoolery. People are full of bullshit and weird beliefs, weird opinions. People are just generally different from you. So you will find that you probably get a little bit more annoyed than you did before at certain people in your life, and then you think, oh my God, like, they're not meant to be a part of my life, I need to cut them out, blah blah blah. And like, it kind of just makes your life feel a whole lot more difficult because you snap back into reality again and you realize that your external world around you is actually the same, and now it's time for you to actually take aligned action to make your life aligned with who you are mentally. And I think that's something that I really struggled with. So yeah, I think it can kind of lower your tolerance levels for people and reality when you've been isolating yourself, because it is so easy and it's so peaceful and it's so nice and you feel so great while you're doing it. I don't know if everyone feels that way, but as an introvert who I really enjoy spending time with myself, I feel like it is something that I really enjoy and it just makes me feel safe and protected and happy. But I think it's very important to understand that it could potentially lower your tolerance for anyone else in your life. I think that triggers are a very necessary part of the healing process, and I think that isolating yourself for a period of time in your life isn't inherently bad, and I do think that there are definitely benefits to it and definitely good things that I've taken from it and that I've got from it, and I would never say don't do it because I do think it has been very, very beneficial for me. I think the problem just lies in when we continue in these loops, like we keep on doing it, because us isolating ourselves, it becomes our new barometer for comfort, and it's like our new kind of homeostasis, like our new balance of what feels comfortable and what feels good for us. So I think once you've done it once, it can low-key be a little bit addicting, because once you have done it once, then you go out into the real world, realize that everyone's actually really fucking annoying and everyone is different and everyone has different opinions and different outlooks on life. It's so easy for you to then retreat back into your comfort bubble and continue to isolate yourself because it's just easier. But I think that triggers are so necessary, and there are only so many triggers that you can have or experience when you're isolating yourself, because you are very much sheltering yourself from the world. And it's only when you go out in the real world and have real people reflecting back to you very real qualities and traits within yourself that might not necessarily be great and that you could probably do with working on. You're not going to get that if you're just constantly isolating yourself and you're not actually living life in the real world. So I do think in a way that isolating yourself kind of, as much as it builds up your self-concept and all the things that I mentioned before, like it kind of does weaken us a little bit, or it can have the potential to weaken us. And I think that's definitely something to be wary of. Now I want to talk about the anxious to avoidant pipeline, because that has been something that has been very prevalent in my journey. I have always been an anxious attached girly. That was always who I was up until I started doing this work and working towards becoming more secure in my attachment style. And I became aware of this. I realized that I needed to go through this like isolation period, spend some time with myself, really get to know myself. And I very much knew that I hated avoidant people. Like I hated any signs of avoidance in people. It really annoyed me. It really triggered me and I didn't like it. Yet little did I realize that in taking this path of self-discovery and self-worth and self-love, that I was actually turning into the avoidant person that I was trying to get away from. And that is a really interesting discovery for me to have had. And this is only a very recent discovery. I never would have labeled myself as an avoidant person. I knew that I had avoidant traits in certain things, but I never would have said that I was avoidant of anything. I would always say that I was quite self-aware. I like to talk through my feelings. I like to deal with problems as they arise, but it really did, or really has, become my reality. And I've realized that recently, and I'm like, oh my god, that has changed my perspective completely on isolation seasons. So in me realizing that I had become a little bit more avoidant rather than anxious, I realized that I was actually cutting people out of my life and distancing myself from people purely out of avoidance. And obviously at the time it didn't feel like avoidance, it just felt like I was putting myself first and I was setting boundaries and I was cutting people out of my life who didn't align, blah blah blah. But when I look back on it, I didn't actually have any conversations with these people about how I was feeling and why I was distancing myself. So an example that I can think of now is with my friend. So me and my friend, we really distanced from each other last year because we were just going in very different directions and we had different things going on in our life. She had a lot of things going on in her life and I was going through things, a lot of internal things, and a lot of triggers were coming up, and I just simply didn't have the capacity or the energy to be there for her as much as I would have wanted to have been. Obviously I was still there for her in like voice notes and Snapchatting each other and texting each other, but I just couldn't physically be there for her as much because one, I was saving my money, and two, I was like in my little isolation era where I was dealing with a lot of inner demons. So yeah, we kind of distanced from each other and it went very much unaddressed. We both felt it. It was something that was very big that had happened in our friendship because before that we would speak every single day. We were very, very close. We would do things together all the time. And I do think that from my side of it, like I just started saying no to a lot of things. Like she would always make effort with me. She was like, I genuinely can't fault her at all. Like she would always make effort with me, but I was just very much like, no, I can't do this, I can't do that. Because for me, it was easier to say no to everything rather than like saying to her like how I actually felt. Yeah, we kind of like grew apart. And it was only a few weeks ago where I actually had this intuitive feeling within me to actually voice note her and send her a long voice note of everything that I'd been feeling over the past year and really addressing the elephant in the room. And I basically just told her everything that I'd been feeling and how I felt because I knew deep down that I didn't want to lose that friendship, even though in my mind I had basically grieved the friendship. Like I'd come to terms with the fact that we had distanced and we are no longer friends like we used to be, when really it wasn't that deep. Like that was very dramatic of me, but I think that is all rooted in me becoming quite avoidant, which is rooted in the fact that I was in my isolation era and I was focusing on myself a lot. I was focusing that much on myself that I didn't even communicate a problem with a very treasured friend of mine. Like I didn't even communicate it at all because I was just avoiding the fact that it was awkward to talk about. So yeah, we spoke about it, and obviously since like we've spoken about it, I've realized like we didn't even need to let it turn out that way. And yeah, that was kind of a general theme of the year. And I did notice in other respects, like I was very much avoiding spending time with family or spending too much time with family, and I was just kind of wrapped up in my own head, in my own world. I'd not communicated anything with anyone because I just convinced myself that speaking to them wouldn't achieve anything. But I think really deep down I was just avoiding any conflict and discomfort that might cause me or that might disrupt my little sanctuary that I'd made for myself in my isolation era. It's making me cringe so much saying that, but just, you know what I mean. So yeah, I really did go from being anxiously attached and codependent and needing to spend time with people all the time to actually just wanting to be on my own all the time and realizing that I'm actually an introvert and that I enjoy my own company and that my own company fuels me. But I did it in a way where I just went extreme with it, and I do think that that's something that is pushed on us on social media. And I don't know if this is just me. I don't know if this is just the way that I'm perceiving it because of the way that I'm inclined to be. Like obviously I'm an introvert and I enjoy spending time with myself, so maybe I do take it out of proportion. I don't know. Like let me know what you guys think on this, because I just think that the way that people promote these isolation seasons and putting your phone on DND and going ghost on everyone and then coming back unrecognizable, I think the way that it's pushed on us is very all or nothing. It's very much like you have to disconnect from the world, focus on yourself, and then go back out into the world and live your life. And if I've learned anything from doing things all or nothing, it's that it's not healthy. It's really not healthy. It's not good to isolate yourself completely from the world and then just throw yourself back out into the real world and be so completely in a state of shock and disbelief that you actually end up retreating back into isolating again. I don't know. Another way that I was actually being avoidant, and this is something that I've really journaled on and I've really dug deep and found out, but I was being very avoidant in the sense of I'd created such a safe place and a sanctuary within myself, and I'd learned how to deal with a lot of discomfort of my living arrangement that I'm in now, that I actually got good at it. And because I learned to manage myself and my emotions in an environment that is a little bit toxic and not in alignment to who or where I want to be, I got very complacent and comfortable, and I wasn't taking the necessary action steps that were actually going to get me to where I wanted to be. I completely neglected my, not end goal, but my goal of wanting to move out and have my own space, because I was that focused on myself and just like my mindset, doing shadow work and inner work and all that kind of stuff. And I think when you're doing a lot of work like that, it can be very consuming and it can be very draining energetically, to the point where you don't really have the energy to be productive and to go out into the world and do the things that you need to do, because you're constantly dealing with a lot of shit from your past and trauma, and that is very, very tiring. So like the fact that I was feeling so tired all of the time, and I was like, well, I don't understand it, because like I'm resting, I'm getting all my sleep, I'm eating all my greens, I'm doing everything that I need to do. I was so tired because I was spending so much time kind of fast tracking, or like it was like I was doing an intensive course on healing, and really it's not even that deep. Like it doesn't need to be that deep. You can journal on a daily basis. You don't need to go into like a whole 2-hour session of journaling in the day. Like you could literally journal for 10 minutes in the morning, or whenever you're feeling something and you just have a moment alone, just propping your iPhone up, pressing record, and just spewing out everything that you're feeling. Like there are ways and means to emotionally regulate throughout the day without having to be so extreme about it. And I think because I was being extreme about it, and because I was spending so much time doing like deep inner work, I was just so tired, and therefore didn't have the energy to do anything that I needed to do. And consequently, I had the realization the other day, actually, I spoke about this in my previous video, but I had the realization that I've not actually made anything happen in my life. Like I've not actually done anything, because I've spent so much time doing the behind the scenes work, which I do feel like it does have its benefits. Like I do think it was very necessary, but I think the way that healing is, it's a lifelong thing. You're not just gonna do 6 months of intensive healing and then all of your troubles melt away. That is not how life works. That's not how healing works, because when you actually go out into the world and you communicate with different people, you meet different people, everyone mirrors back different things to you about yourself, and everything in life is like a lesson, and there is something to learn in every aspect of life. So there's only so much you can learn in an isolation season. You actually have to live in order to heal as much as you want to heal. Now that I've had this epiphany, I feel like now I can kind of take back a bit of power and redirect myself and refocus on what's actually important in my life, and not concentrate so much on me, and all the inner work that I need to do and all the healing that I need to do. I can actually focus on taking action steps to being a better person and doing the things that I want to do. And number one on my list is moving out. So honestly guys, I talk about this in every video, but one day there's going to be a new backdrop and you're going to be like, oh my god, she finally fucking did it. So to summarize, or to conclude this video, I feel like I have definitely had a perspective change in the respect of this kind of content and the self-development, self-care, self-love content, and the way that it's being pushed onto us. I do definitely think it has a place and it's really helpful, and I think it can often find you at the time of your life when you need to find it. And I am not discrediting any of the progress or anything that I've learned during that time, but I do think that I've potentially allowed myself to drag it out a little bit too long and allow myself to create a new comfort zone in isolating myself from the world and keeping myself protected from the realities of what's going on outside. I personally think going forward, I want to implement a lot more balance into my life and not follow these trends of isolating yourself for 6 months or 3 months or however long and then coming back a new person, because at the end of the day, like, I don't want to be a new person. I want to be me. I just want to be the best version of me. And I know that's what those videos are getting at, but I just think that they can definitely give the wrong message. And I think if you're anything like me, you are definitely someone who would be susceptible to maybe falling in the trap that I have fallen into, which is to find too much comfort in your own company and become too self-obsessed and become too kind of conceited in a way. Like, I got to a point where I was just like, I'm the shit. I am the shit. And as much as I think that, like, you're allowed to think that, that's great. But I think it was just becoming my identity. It was becoming who I was. And I didn't really have much to offer. Like I was saying, I didn't have anything to talk about. I didn't know what was going on TikTok because I didn't have TikTok. I didn't know what was going on in the general media. I didn't know what was going on in life. I was just so sheltered and so comfortable in the little shell that I had created for myself that when I actually was ever exposed to the real world, like let's say for example, when I went to travel Thailand for 4 months, I came across a lot of adversities and a lot of struggles and a lot of difficulties in that time. And I do think it's because of the stark contrast between me isolating myself and then me throwing myself balls deep into real life. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this topic and if you guys can relate to anything that I've said, because for all I know, I'm probably just being crazy right now and I'm the only one experiencing this. But I do think that the way that this content is pushed onto us, I don't know, I just think it's it's a little bit rooted in all or nothing culture, and I don't think that ever benefits any of us. I think it's a lot better for us to move throughout life with a sense of balance and daily emotional regulation rather than just going all or nothing. But I think after speaking about this today, like, I do still think that it is of benefit to have an isolation season and to take that time out to really get to know yourself and love yourself if you were anything like me, because I did majorly suffer with codependency and I was anxiously attached, and I didn't really have that much of a sense of self or identity. I didn't have a very strong self-worth. I didn't have a lot of confidence. So I do think that it's offered me a lot. But I think if you are just like kind of new into this space, I want you guys to know that it is so easy to fall in the trap of staying in that space and isolating yourself from the world forever and using the excuse of I'm an introvert to not do anything with your life, because life is for living, guys. Like, we have to experience life. We have to go out into the world and have shitty things happen to us. We have to experience hardship and difficulty. That is just the spice of life. That is what we are here for, and it's all in the name of character development at the end of the day. Like, everything that you go through in life builds you up to be the person that you need to be, but you're not going to experience any of that if you are constantly in your shell and you're constantly isolating yourself. It's just not going to happen. This is just a realization that I'm having at the minute anyway, guys. Like, I do feel very strongly in the fact that I just want to go forward into life being a bit more social and being a little bit more open to doing things that I wouldn't usually do and not just saying no immediately. I hope you guys are all doing okay. Let me know what you think about this topic. Let me know if you've got any opinions. Let me know if you disagree with me, obviously in a polite and respectful way. I'm just telling you my personal experience with this. Let me know what you think about self-development culture at the minute and what you're thinking about it right now, and if you think that it's getting a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to put words into your mouth. Just let me know what you think about it all right now. I'm definitely going to do a video on that in the future because I've got a lot of thoughts. Yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like it and subscribe to this channel. Follow me on Instagram, voice notes from your bestie. It's linked down below, and I also have linked down below my link to work with me one-on-one if that's anything that you guys are interested in. Other than that, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.